Updated ban list came out today, and Game Changers list also changed. So let's talk about it. So it's pretty quite simple, honestly. So we're going to start with the ban list, and then we're going to move to the game changers because, quite honestly, the game changers is the really big portion of this entire video that I'm doing. But the ban list wasn't even a ban; it was a unban, and I'm going to explain that here. So as you can see, February 9th, 2026, by Gavin, Biorhythm was unbanned and Lutri was unbanned except as a companion. So you cannot use Lutri as a companion, but you can use them as a commander and you can put them into the 99, but cannot use them as a companion. So this is cool. I like it. And it's a good thing. I'll give them credit where credit is due. But here's the flip side of that coin. And I'm going to be doing this a lot where I'm going to tell you the good and the bad. The good is that they're on the right track. So I will give them credit on that. The bad side of the coin is that this is still not enough. Okay. It's not enough. And the game changers list is why I think that. And I'm going to explain that actually right now. So I'm going to show you guys the game changers list and why that the ban list was mediocre. So here is the game changers list. There's a few noticeable things that have been changed since the last time that we looked at this. One of them being that Farewell has been added to the game changers list, which I thought was hilarious. Rhystic Study and Thassa's Oracle, instead of getting banned, were put onto the game changers list. So the initial idea at the very start when they announced that they were doing the ban list today was that they were wanting to ban one or the other. Well, the community was like, no, absolutely not. We do not want that. And there were a few that said that they wanted Rhystic Study banned, and there were a few that were on the opposite side that said they wanted Thassa's Oracle banned. But they were very few far in between, as I've said. Most of the community wants to keep both of those cards because they are really good cards and they are very expensive cards. And you don't want to go out and spend a lot of money on this game only to have the card that you just spent a lot of money on drop in price because you can't use them in tournament sanctioned events. Hence the Jeweled Lotus and Mana Crypt scenario, which I'm about to get into here in just a few minutes to kind of explain that point of the spectrum. Another one was that Biorhythm was also added to this list after it gets unbanned. So Biorhythm is now a game changer. There's a few other ones that are on here that got added, essentially. But I'm not going to go into all of that just because of the fact that it would take me a long time to go through each individual one. But I did highlight the big ones, the ones that were at least put onto the list that made the most sense in regards to today, right? Now, with that being said, I'm going to now explain to you exactly why it is that I think this whole scenario is not as grand as it should be. Okay. Now, here's the problem, right? You put Rhystic Study and Thassa's Oracle into the Game Changers list instead of banning it because you went by what the community said, saying that they did not want them banned. The problem with that is that is what you should have done with the Jeweled Lotus and Mana Crypt, was you should have put them in the Game Changers list, and you should have updated the Game Changers list to where you essentially have it now. So just to show you exactly what I mean by that. This right here. This is the current game changers list that we have right now, where that bracket 1 and bracket 2 have no game changers. None. So anything that's on this list cannot be in those brackets at all. But then you have bracket 3, where it shows 0 to 3 game changers. And then 4 and 5 can have no deck restrictions. You can have as many as you want. You can do an entire deck of nothing but game changers. But this is how you should have done it to begin with. This is how you should have started the entire scenario, instead of banning 2 of the most prominent cards in the Commander format. Because let's face it, Jeweled Lotus cannot be used in any other format except Legacy. So Jeweled Lotus is literally a nothing card. It is a card that does absolutely nothing in every format except for Commander. And there's not a single soul on this earth that can say otherwise. That the only 2 formats Jeweled Lotus is used in is Legacy and Commander. But you can't use it in Commander because it's still banned in sanctioned formats. Now, you could go and do the Rule 0 thing, which is more for the casual side of things, for LGSs that just want people to come in and have fun and play with the cards they want to play. But when you're trying to go and become more competitive and play in a competitive scene, whether it be in CEDH or any other format, when you ban cards that are only useful in that specific format and nowhere else, and you do so because you're trying to initially go from being a competitive game to a casual game, that's where the problem lies. So here's my opinion of what should happen. So using a precon as an example, in this case, we're going to use the latest precons of Dance of the Elements, just to showcase what I'm going to mean by this. Every single precon that has ever been released has a copy of both Sol Ring and Arcane Signet. Every single one of them. You go back as far as precons have been released to the very early days, they have all come out with those 2 cards in the list. And there is an entire group of community, like in and of itself, that wants Sol Ring to be gone because of how good Sol Ring is and how that every single deck, literally 99.9% of Commander decks run Sol Ring. Every one of them. And they also run Arcane Signet. So here's the thing. Instead of banning Jeweled Lotus, which in and of itself, like I said earlier, is a useless card outside of Commander or for Legacy or Vintage, right? Which they don't even use them in those 2 places. There's literally one deck that uses them, and they don't even use them the way they're supposed to be used, right? Outside of that, Jeweled Lotus, as a whole, is on the same consistency as a Sol Ring. Same consistency. The only difference is that it costs 0 to play, and you have to sacrifice it in order for you to get its effect. Now, yes, there are ways that you can cheat it back into play, and there are ways that you can kind of abuse that system. But honestly, you can do the same thing with Sol Ring. You can abuse Sol Ring. There are decks that abuse Sol Ring. They can make it to where that instead of 2 mana, it taps for 3. Some can even make it tap for more than that. But in and of itself, they're on the same wavelength. Whether you think of them that way or not, they are literally one and the same. They provide mana source. Here's my opinion. Go back and add Jeweled Lotus to Game Changers list. Add Mana Crypt to the Game Changers list. Put them both in the colorless bracket. But make it to where that every precon gets a Jeweled Lotus. Every precon. As soon as you release a new precon, every precon gets a Jeweled Lotus. Every one. And the reasoning for that is because of what I just mentioned before, where it's on the same wavelength as Soul Ring, right? If you're not going to ban Soul Ring, why ban Jeweled Lotus that is only useful in Commander unless you're using it for older formats like Vintage or Legacy, where they don't even have tournaments for those anymore? Really, like they really don't. Like you very rarely ever hear of people playing Legacy or Vintage anymore, because Magic is getting to a point that people can't afford it anymore. You physically cannot afford it anymore. Like the lands themselves that are needed in order to play those formats and play them competitively, they cost as much as, honestly, several deck lists. By the time that you can afford the lands, you could have bought like 20 precons, maybe even more than that, right? So my opinion is put Jeweled Lotus and Mana Crypt on the Game Changers list, because you did that with Rhystic Study and you did that with Thassa's Oracle, meaning that the only brackets that can use them legally in a sanctioned tournament of any kind is brackets 3 and up, right? But you could have done the same thing with Jeweled Lotus and Mana Crypt and prevented the entire scenario that happened when you did ban them, of people going, absolutely batshit crazy when you went and did the ban list for them. You could have went as far as to put them on the Game Changers list, and people would have been fine with that, because that satisfies both parties. That satisfies the casual people, and that satisfies the CEDH people and everybody in between. Because when you have the bracket system that looks like this, where it literally states no Game Changers for brackets 1 and 2 and 0 to 3 in bracket 3, right? And then 4 and 5 has no deck restrictions. It makes it so much simpler, because then the players who design their deck lists have to decide whether or not they want to run the Mana Rocks for their Game Changers, or if they want to run something like the Rhystic Study Thassa's Oracle. They have to make that decision. And honestly, if you're running Thassa's Oracle in bracket 3, you're definitely going to want to run the combo that goes with it, right? So essentially you're grabbing yourself 2 spots already that gets taken up in order to just run it in a bracket 3 format. And now, granted, Tainted Pack and Demonic Consultation is not on this bracket Game Changers list, so those other 2 cards don't get added to the Game Changer. But in and of itself, if you're running Thassa's Oracle, you're probably going to be running Rhystic Study, meaning that's 2 Game Changers taken right off the list, right off the bat, if you're running them in bracket 3. So then what are you going to do? It means you only have 1 spot left. And what are you going to use that for? Are you going to use that for 1 Mana Rock? Are you going to use that for what, an ad nauseum? I mean, what are you essentially going to put in there in order to fill up that spot? So my thing is instead of banning the cards that you know for a fact literally makes no sense outside of this format, like at all, right? You should have put them as game changers, and you should have changed the bracket list to this right here or something even more detailed, right? And then you have an opportunity right now to fix the problem that you started, right? Of banning those two cards and causing hundreds, thousands of people to completely destroy their Jeweled Lotuses and do so on social media, no less, and tick off a lot of people. Like you literally pissed off an entire community by doing that. You have a way to fix it by adding it to a precon. And then that fits within the bracket 3 scenario of 0 to 3 game changers, meaning that from here on out, all precons are going to be bracket 3 or up. Like, essentially, that's exactly what would happen, is that they would become bracket 3s or higher, depending on how many game changers you add to your precons, which I would not go above 3. That's my own personal opinion. Like, 3 for a precon is way more than enough. I would say at max, do 1, maybe 2 game changers, depending on the deck. But that one single game changer could have been a Jeweled Lotus and should be a Jeweled Lotus. And then it gets printed in every single precon from here on out, the same as Soul Ring. The exact same. But I digress. That's just how I think about it. But that's essentially what happened, was instead of banning 2 cards that were the biggest topics for months, they instead put them on the game changers list because the community said, no, we don't want these banned. Like, we want to still use them because they are expensive cards and we spent a lot of money on these cards. And for you to take them away from us, that's too much. They did the same thing with Jeweled Lotus. Jeweled Lotus was what at the time over $100 in value, and they took that money away from them like that when they could have done this right here, but with Mana Crypt and Jeweled Lotus. They could have done it easily, and it would have made so much sense. But this right here, while this is a good thing that they are on the right track of unbanning cards and giving us cards that we should have had back a long time ago, it's still not enough. It's really not. You could have done more. And you chose not to because you're in the mindset that you honestly believe that this will be and stay forever a casual format. And it's not. There are way too many people that are in this community that want to make this a competitive and casual format. We did the same thing with Standard. There was a point in time where Standard wasn't even competitive. It was more of like a thought before it started going off and becoming popular. Same thing's happening with Commander. Started off as a casual format and immediately started exploding into a competitive format. Everything changes. sometimes for the better, sometimes for the worse. In this case, it needs to change for the better. We need to have all of this in order to keep the game alive. That's just my opinion. But this is essentially what my thoughts are on the whole ban list announcement. And I'm going to put that in big quotations. They're on the right track, but they need to do more. And the big topic of the day wasn't even the Ristic study and Thassa's Oracle getting added to the game changers list. It's the fact that you, instead of banning those two cards, you put them on the game changers list, which was a great idea, but you should have unbanned the two cards that would have set everybody off and made everybody happy. Put them on the game changers list, and then as compensation for what you did, you should have made it to where that Jeweled Lotus, not Mana Crypt. Mana Crypt is fine where it's at, right? But you could have put Jeweled Lotus in every precon, making precons bracket 3 and up. Could have. And you should. But anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. I greatly appreciate it. So we will see you guys next week for another episode of Chaos Commander. Hope to see you guys then. Have a great rest of your day and see you in the next video. Peace.